Chapter 1. The Dainka Effect. August 2000. Costa Mesa, California. Random dude, vacation house. I had no idea whose vacation house it was, but the beer-soaked haze in the living room was already thick enough to slice. It was one of those suffocating California nights when even the walls seemed to sweat, and my beer went lukewarm faster than I could force it down my throat. Jesus. We weren't even thirsty anymore. Everyone was fine. Too fine. It was that loose, grinning kind of state where even the biggest bullshit starts to sound like a life-changing idea. The house was packed with people cut from the same cloth, everyone bringing their +1 or their +5, so there was barely any space left to move between all those unfamiliar faces. The four of us formed a tiny island in the middle of the chaos, doubled over at some absolutely ridiculous nonsense Cade was performing in his British accent. That was when Roxy turned to me, that familiar spark already dancing in her eyes. I knew instantly what was coming. "Listen, we seriously need a fucking band," she said. I just grinned. Here we go again. We always end up right here. You know, stepping out on stage, screaming into the mic, and seeing that people actually get what you're saying, she went on. I just nodded. Cade cut in from the couch. Not just hear it. Yeah, I said. They understand it. They twitch at the same moments. Their fists clench in the same places. They grin at the same lines. They scream it back at you like, yeah, fuck, we feel this too. Roxy nodded. That moment when you can't even hear yourself anymore because the crowd is louder than you are. We took another sip of our beers, and for a brief second, silence settled between us. Then the upstairs door opened. Coming down the stairs was 160 centimeters of concentrated cuteness. She was wearing 3/4 pants and a pair of absolutely destroyed DC shoes, the toes worn pale from endless hours against skateboard grip tape. The kind of sneakers that practically scream they weren't bought for show. There was something familiar about her. Something very familiar. She looked just as broke as we were, not the posing kind of struggling artist, but the real version. The kind of person who owns one pair of shoes and keeps wearing them until they practically fall off their feet. But we weren't looking at her shoes. That would have been difficult anyway. She had two beautiful, perfectly shaped breasts, and wedged between them was an ice-cold beer bottle beaded with condensation. She held it there in the 30-degree heat, as if this were the most natural cooling method in the world. In that moment, a person could forget even their own name, let alone whatever the hell they'd been talking about seconds earlier. The cold glass began to sweat, droplets slowly tracing their way down the narrow valley between her breasts, and somehow, the entire noise of the living room seemed to dim. We stared at those few sliding drops, as if our lives depended on them. Cade's mouth hung open. Nova just raised an eyebrow. I suddenly wasn't even sure what my own name was. She drifted across the center of the room, half sleepy, half cheeky, like this was the most normal thing imaginable. The four of us froze on the couch, watching her with exactly the same expression. Breath held, mouths slightly open. She kept swaying toward the terrace, leaving the last fragments of the moment burned into our retinas. Nova was the first to speak. She cleared her throat and looked us over with that familiar, mocking half-smile. Well, I seriously fucking hope our fans are going to look at us exactly like that one day, you assholes. Cade and I exchanged a glance. Just a quick one, enough to confirm, no, we hadn't hallucinated. That scene had actually happened. Then, the next second, all four of us exploded into uncontrollable laughter. The kind that makes your stomach cramp, steals the air from your lungs, and the harder you try to say something, the more violently you shake. We completely fell apart. We were writhing on that couch like four lunatics, just swallowing our tears. Roxy was choking with laughter, wiping at her eyes as she tried to catch enough breath to get the words out. Wait, she gasped, only to be seized by another fit of giggling. That's it. What is? Cade asked, swallowing his own tears. Roxy grinned at us, her face flushed from the effort. That look. Nova instantly locked in. She already understood. She nodded, her gaze still drifting toward the terrace door. The open mouth. The laughter slowly burned itself out until only the tired creak of the ceiling fan was left humming above us. I could feel my t-shirt sticking to my back, and suddenly my own heartbeat sounded way too loud. We looked at each other. No one was smiling anymore. The Dainka face, I said at last. Silence hit the room. So suddenly it felt like someone had cut the sound completely. We sat there in the beer-soaked heat, staring at one another. Something in the air had shifted. We weren't just four drunk kids in a stranger's vacation house anymore. Cade grinned, then in his slow British accent spoke the words we'd all been waiting for. The Dainka Effect. And somewhere in that moment, the whole thing was truly born. Right there, in the middle of four half-drunk, too loud, daydreaming idiots howling with laughter. Still, we knew. We felt it deep in our stomachs. That this was more than just a drunken idea, more than some summer bullshit we'd forget by the next morning. There was a very rare, very raw certainty in it. The kind that tells you this is actually going to happen. And that from that point on, no one and nothing would be able to stop us. Before the crowd completely dissolved into the pale mist of dawn, we sealed the deal standing on the sticky floor of that vacation house. There were no big speeches, no ceremony. We just looked each other in the eye and said it out loud. Tomorrow, 5 p.m., Roxy's garage. Anyone who doesn't show up is dead to us. Anyone who's late is a traitor. When I finally got home, my room was dark and silent. I collapsed onto the bed, still wearing my beer-soaked t-shirt, and didn't care. I stared at the crack running across the ceiling, the way it stretched above me like a map leading into a completely new life. The smell of stale beer dried against my chest. My head was buzzing. But somewhere in my gut, there was a strange, steady calm. There were no more questions. I was the front man of the Dainka Effect. That thought pulsed in my temples stronger than the oncoming hangover. For the first time in my life, I wasn't obsessing over the past, and I wasn't afraid of tomorrow's nothingness. There was a fixed point now. 5 p.m., Roxy's garage. And somehow I could feel it. I knew it. From that moment on, nothing would ever be the same.